So what is the, we're largely talking about state policy here, I think, and in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. What's the demand or the receptivity for this, across various divisions of government, whether it's labor or labor and industry, health, education, social welfare, at all levels, sort of the House, the Senate, agency directors, the governor's office. What's the response been?
Yeah, I think that overall there's been a number of different efforts legislatively at the congressional level, at the federal level, around kind of what evidence-based policymaking is. And we saw in the previous Congress and in this Congress a number of different bills moving through Congress that were explicitly trying to take the principles of evidence-based policymaking, where we rely on the existing scientific evidence to guide what that legislation looks like, but also in turn trying to write legislation that kind of fosters and tries to grow the scientific base, like the scientific evidence base for future work. I think that we've seen that in a number of levels in a pretty bipartisan fashion, maybe surprisingly so at times. And some of those early bills have, we've seen them go through their implementation and have a lot of successes. So I think there's real appetite for this sort of quote unquote evidence-based policymaking. But what that looks like when the rubber hits the road is more complex, of course. One of the areas that I would consider to be a current bright spot that's ongoing is the work in the data space. We saw through some of the recent legislation that was enacted and now is being implemented, efforts to install leadership in every department at the federal level that are overseeing kind of curating the data of those departments and agencies. And I think there's been that's been a really exciting area that I encourage people to watch. And then, of course, many of the departments have granting agencies that are, provide the very grants that researchers and faculty here at Penn State are tapping into. And I think that this idea, whether it's NIH or the Institute for Educational Sciences or the National Institute of Justice, of research that has relevance and can answer these kind of pressing social questions, we're seeing more of that. We certainly have been very excited to see, for instance, the Institute for Educational Sciences now requiring cost and cost effectiveness analyses for all of their evaluations, basically their evaluation grants. And that's been really powerful because it's bringing groups and economists who may be outside of the educational space to come in and work with those different groups. So that's been an exciting area. And another kind of piece of evidence, if you will, to point to where it is possible to do policy relevant work, socially relevant work at an increasing rate using traditional funding streams.
Mm-hmm. What about at the state level? You spent a lot of time there talking about at the federal level, but a lot of important pressing issues are in states and municipalities within states. States sometimes have more funding challenges. So how's it been working in the Commonwealth on these concepts?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that Penn State, as part of the land grant mission, we do have some, responsibility to certainly to provide the information what we learn back to communities in the legislature whenever possible. And so, but I think that sets a really fertile ground for collaborative projects. And maybe the state doesn't necessarily have the resources to bring to bear for the entirety of the project or even at all, but looking for those partnerships to then go out and seek out other funding. The Social Science Research Institute, through their level 1 and level 2 funding mechanisms, has certainly been funding work in this space, and groups like CHICPR, and I know you've been supporting, your center has been supporting a lot of different grants that for a while now that are really seeking to have this kind of state and local level relevance as well as national impact. So I think that building on those infrastructures has been really powerful. For our specific work in particular, we've been excited about some of the opportunities within DHS and through the child welfare space in particular, the Office of OCYF, and the projects that we've been on the ground there, those that I mentioned earlier, that we've been doing in the child welfare space, those have been, in particular, coming in close partnership with those groups. Department of Health, insurance, certainly in the context of the opioid epidemic, there's been a number of interagency groups